Hey everybody, we're here for the first of the evolution video lectures. So prior to this, we've talked about DNA, we've talked about mutations, we talked about all that kind of business. And one of the major purposes of why we talk about DNA is because of evolution and later on ecology. And you'll see some of the things like mutations and the way DNA works and how it is inherited. It's going to play a major factor in how evolution actually occurs. So we're going to start things off with a few little background pieces of knowledge that you might need to know in order to really get your claws into evolution. So starting things off here, an organism, that's just a term we use to describe a specific individual that's a living thing. Species, on the other hand, are the largest group of organisms that are still able to produce fertile offspring. That fertile part is a very key word because some species, some related species that are close together, are still able to have offspring. However, their children wouldn't be able to have offspring themselves. An example being a lion and a tiger. If you breed a lion and a tiger together, you get a liger. Ligers are sterile, they can't have children of their own, so therefore lions and tigers are indeed different species. A population, we'll talk more about populations next unit too, but that's just a group of organisms that live in the same space and area that belong to the same species. And finally we get down to a little bit of genetics. The genetics is going to come up because we're talking about inheritance and we inherit genes and things. And these two words we'll be throwing around are genotype and phenotype. Starting off with phenotype because it's a little bit easier to understand. A phenotype is a trait which your body displays. For instance, I have green eyes, so for my eye color, my phenotype is green. However, for my genotype, genotypes encompass a little bit more than just what you see in a person. A genotype is both of the inherited genes an individual receives from their parents. And I know my dad has green eyes, so I got my green eye trait from my father. But from my mother, I got a blue-eyed trait. So I know for my genotype, I'm green-blue. Because green is dominant to blue, I have green eyes, but I have that little sneaky blue-eyed gene hiding in my DNA still. And we'll see these genotypes and phenotypes, they'll pop up once in a while inside of evolution. We'll talk a lot more about those next unit too in the populations unit. So starting things off here with the actual push towards evolution. Evolution, I want to start off with a bit of a preface. Evolution is a point of contention between science and religion in the United States. Oddly enough, outside the United States, you don't see that conflict happening quite as much. I do want to say here, evolution is a theory that describes how species have changed over time to become better adapted to their environment in addition to the creation of new species or the formation of new species. We aren't going to make any kind of claims about the origin of life, which I think is probably the biggest contention point between the science community and the religious community. The theory that really talks about that's the primordial soup model. That's that little game in the corner. That's actually a game. We're not going to discuss that very much. We're just going to assume that things have been alive for a long time, and we're going to try to figure out exactly why they change. All right, so kind of starting to dig our way into what evolution is, we're going to kind of trace the idea up until we get to our modern time about what we actually understand about evolution now. The concept that life has changed over time is an old idea, actually. First recorded in the time of the Romans. But because of the sack of Rome and the Dark Ages in Europe, that idea was forgotten for some time. Our modern theory of evolution was written by Charles Darwin in 1859. So we're going to look about what's going on before Darwin and a little bit after, but just a little bit of information on Darwin himself. Darwin was an Englishman. He studied a lot of things. He studied to be a surgeon. He studied to be a clergyman, which means priest. But he really found his true interest lied in the fields of naturalism and biology. He took a job as a naturalist on a ship called the HMS Beagle, which was bound to take a voyage around the world. And that gave him an opportunity that many scientists don't really get in this period of time, and that is to see living things on every different continent, and that gives him a vantage point that many people haven't had the luxury of having. Um, prior to Darwin, prior to Darwin and his voyage, the scientific community was kind of in a bit of tumult at this point in time. Before, in the Renaissance period, we believed that life was unchanging. So the animals that are living today have always lived today, such as tigers, um, and they've always looked this way. There was never a point in time in which tigers didn't exist. However, this idea in Darwin's time period was starting to be challenged because scientists began to discover fossilized remains of species that had gone extinct, such as dinosaurs. And looking at some of these skeletal remains and things, it really confused scientists because there weren't any giant monster lizard things walking around in our current time. So where have these things come from? And if they've gone away, then this whole idea of life being unchanging kind of gets called into question. One scientist had proposed an idea that would explain how life has been changing, and that man's name is Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. Lamarck proposes an idea that organisms could change over the course of their own lifespans by using or not using a particular body part. For instance, in the graphic on the bottom right over here with this giraffe, Lamarck proposed the idea that giraffes started off looking more like a deer. And living in the African Serengeti, many animals eat grass, but not many animals specialize in eating trees or tree leaves. And the giraffes would go up to a tree and try and reach up their necks to try and get a piece of, a bite of leaves off the tree. And because they were stretching their necks out, they actually elongated their necks a little bit. And when those giraffes that elongated their necks reproduced, they passed that trait on to their children. So their children were born with longer necks already, and when those children kept stretching further and further up into the trees to get more leaves, they stretched their necks out a little bit more, and that process continued to produce longer and longer and longer necks until we eventually get our modern iteration of what giraffes look like. That idea made sense to Lamarck, and he proposed it to the scientific community. And I want you to be very careful of Lamarck, because Lamarck sounds like it could be okay an idea. It sounds possibly correct, but it is not. Lamarck was, once his idea was investigated by some other scientists, they began quickly to refute his idea and almost ridicule him too for how silly it sounded. One of the biggest cases in which scientists used to refute his idea was a tribe of African people who had some interesting traditional body modification traditions. This tribe, when you became of age, so about your age right now, they would begin putting spacers, but not in their earlobes like you might see in America, but in their lips. So they would pierce their lip, put a spacer in there, and keep on spacing it out and spacing it out and spacing it out until the adults eventually have these giant like rings in their lips. And when these tribes, the people in these tribes, they reproduce, when they have children, Lamarck's theory would predict that the children would also have these spaced out lips because the parents passed that trait on. But that isn't true. The babies are born normally without the modification to their bodies yet. They have to do that themselves to get the same outcome as their parents. So Lamarck, he proposes an interesting idea, and he kind of starts sniffing around the correct answer, that life is changing. But what Lamarck does incorrectly is that he gets the he gets the method of how things change wrong. And if we kind of think about other things that would happen to people if this Lamarck's theory was correct, if you were to change your body in your own lifespan, you pass it on to your children. So if you would dye your hair before you have kids, say you dye your hair purple, Lamarck's theory would predict that your child would be born with purple hair. If you got piercings, your child would have piercings. If you got a tattoo, your child would also have a tattoo. If you think about Mike Tyson, if he has that gnarly looking face tattoo, if he were to have a child, Lamarck would predict that his children would also have that tattoo, which is not correct. In addition, if you have some kind of accident, like I know a guy in high school who cut off his pinky in a woodshop accident, when he eventually, or if he has had kids already, he won't have a kid that has 4 fingers. Well, 1 less finger, I guess I should say. His child will still have all 5 fingers. It'll be fine. Lamarck is not correct. But what he did do is he gets an idea out there that does get into Darwin's head and kind of starts jumbling around. And we'll see here that Darwin, he puts together a bunch of different people's ideas into one cohesive theory that does a really good job of explaining how life works. Another thing that gets into Darwin's head that starts jumbling around is his actual evidence that he collects on his journey around the world. First off, before he leaves, he does get a chance to see some of the fossils that scientists have found. And as he's traveling on the world, into South America, into Asia, and all these other places, he starts seeing animals that look like the fossils that he saw before he left. One example being this guy right here. He sees this fossil, and he sees armadillos in South America. And he notices that although these animals look different, they look related in some way, shape, or form. They have differences, but they have more similarities than differences. Darwin's also able to explore and notice and study species that live nearby in different. Well, let me give an example, and this will make sense. He observes a bunch of finches on mainland South America, draws them, does some research on them, and when his ship eventually moves on to the next area, they stop at the Galapagos Islands, which are islands just off of South America. And to Darwin's surprise, he sees finches there too that look very similar to the mainland finches. However, there are some differences. He notes that the differences are mostly in the beaks of these finches, where the mainland finch might look something more like slot 2 here. But the other finches he's seeing in the Galapagos Islands are similar, but their beak sizes have changed in some shape or form. And he thinks that this might have happened because these animals were trying to specialize in order to eat foods that were on the island. The bigger beaks here, like in number 1, would be better at eating bigger, tougher seeds that require more musculature to crack and to digest. Whereas the other beaks that are smaller are a little bit more nimble and able to catch insects better. So he sees these animals almost look like they're related too. And that idea starts jumbling around in Darwin's mind as well.